Good morning, everyone. Let's give the attendees a few seconds to join us. Okay. Yes, we're on.
Good morning. We are here on Tuesday, March 31st for a special commission meeting. Lisa, can you please call roll?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority Special Commission meeting. Today is Monday, March 31st, 2026. This meeting is being recorded. Commissioner Sheik,
Here.
Commissioner Graves,
Here.
Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Gruhl, Commissioner McMorran,
Here.
Commissioner Perkins, Commissioner Rodriguez,
Here.
Commissioner Saunders,
Here.
Commissioner Stringer,
Here.
Commissioner Salsa.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. So first we just received a presentation from our auditors, Clifton Larson and Allen, and we have them on virtually for a presentation regarding some documents they sent over just about an hour or two ago. And then we will turn to staff regarding updates to our single audit. So for now, I turn to our virtual presenter.
Hey everyone, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So everyone should have a presentation. Is a preference for me to share my screen, or is someone else going to be pulling that
I
up?
can share it if you would like.
Okay, great. Okay, so I have a brief presentation for the draft audit results for June 30th, 2025. You can go to the next slide. It covers the brief agenda that we have for today. We're going to go over the audit scope and process, the draft audit opinions, as well as some required governance communications. On the following slide covers our audit scope. The audit scope has not changed in comparison to prior years. We issue 3 different reports for the agency. The first is the independent auditor's report. That reports on the financial statements themselves and whether those financial statements are free from material misstatement based on the procedures that we perform. We do perform a risk-based approach audit, so we cannot issue an absolute opinion. The goal there is to issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, essentially stating that readers of the financial statements can rely on those financial statements. The other 2 reports, what we consider like the single audit package with respect to single audit reporting. The first is the report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters in accordance with government auditing standards. That's the controls over the financial reporting process. And then the report on internal control over compliance with major federal programs. That's related to major federal programs that we audit in any given year. That's based on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards that does rotate on an annual basis. For the current year, I'll cover a little bit later that we did audit the Continuum of Care program for the authority. Can move into the next slide. So this slide covers the audit process. As I mentioned earlier, we do a risk-based approach audit on the front end of the audit. We are required to revisit our risk assessment if there are any changes that come to our attention that would impact our risk assessment. We're required to get comfortable with the internal controls in place over any sort of significant or major processes with respect to cash receipts, disbursements, payroll, etc. Revenue recognition is always a risk at any agency. We're required to get comfortable, perform substantive procedures over revenue recognition, ensure revenue is recognized in the proper period. Required to get comfortable with significant estimates. Significant estimates at LASA would relate to allowances on receivables, GASB 87 and GASB 96 leases and SBITAs, as well as compensated absences and depreciation. None of these estimates are really deemed complex or have a high level of uncertainty with respect to those. We do issue a single audit for the agency, as I mentioned previously. There were 2 new GASBs that are required to be implemented for the current fiscal year under audit. The first one is GASB 101 related to compensated absences. That really just updated or made it consistent across all government agencies what's required to be reported as a liability. So there was an increase in the outstanding liability under GASB 101 related to an increase for sick time accrued. And then GASB 102 covers certain risk concentrations that are required to be disclosed in the financial statements if they do exist. And then as far as this last bullet, 4-stage process, just want to cover, as part of the audit process, we first start with our audit preparation. We then move into our detailed review process, where we have a second set of eyes on the work on every work paper, ensure we've dotted our I's, crossed our T's. It moves into the principal review, which is my review of the audit. I do a high-level review, high-risk areas, et cetera. And then lastly, we move into our quality control review process, which is the last stage of the audit process, where we have an unassociated individual within our technical team do a review of our audit, ensure that we've covered our bases with respect to the audit process. You can move into the next slide. So here we have drafts of our audit opinions as well as the audit results. On the left-hand side, for both the financial statement audit and the federal award audit, our opinions are unmodified, which is the best opinion that we can offer on both of those areas. With respect to the financial statements, specifically within the report on internal controls over financial reporting, we do have one significant deficiency in internal control over financial reporting. When we look at deficiencies, we essentially have 3 options: either not reportable, significant deficiency, or material weakness. Significant deficiency is the lesser of the 2 reportable findings. In the current year, we did have a significant deficiency in internal control over financial reporting, specifically to or with related to the timely detection of errors. There were some adjustments that were provided by the LASA team, or that was not timely with respect to reporting. So we'll be reporting a significant deficiency in internal control over financial reporting for that. And then with respect to federal awards, as I mentioned earlier, we did test the Continuum of Care program this year. We did not have any material weaknesses, but we did have one significant deficiency. Again, that's the lesser of the 2 options with respect to reportable findings. With one of our tests over payroll, 3 out of the 40 transactions that we tested, the underlying support did not have approved timesheets prior to the audit. The timesheets were approved after the audit began. So we did have to get exceptions on the internal control over compliance piece with respect to federal awards. You can move into the following slide. This slide covers our required governance communications. A lot of this I already mentioned, but we'll reiterate just due to their importance. Overall, our responsibility, as I mentioned, we don't issue an absolute opinion. It is a risk-based approach audit, and the financial statements are the responsibility of management. We do not have any changes from the planned scope of our audit, but there were 2 new GASBs this year that are disclosed in the financial statements that it did impact the authority in the current year. As far as difficulties, we did have delays in receiving audit information that was communicated to governance via a written letter on March 3rd. We did not have any disagreements with management, and to our knowledge, management did not consult with any other accounting firms. With respect to estimates, I did already mention they were non-complex. None required a significant amount of management judgment. They were pretty straightforward. And then lastly, with respect to other items, we did have some adjustments as a result of audit procedures, and we do have some uncorrected misstatements. Uncorrected misstatements, essentially, those would be any differences between information provided underlying support, or just differences in the current year that we identified that were not material to financial statements, but over what we consider trivial in the aggregate, and it is required to be documented and reported that these adjustments were passed on, so that we identify they're not material in the aggregate to the financial statements. You can move to the next slide. So as far as the next steps to finalize the audit engagement, as mentioned earlier, as part of this 4-stage process, we just wrapped up the 3rd stage of my review. The team's working through my review comments in the audit binder. Once that's done, we'll send it on to our quality control review process, the last stage in the audit process. As far as that's on the CLA side, and as far as the LASA side, we'd be looking for approval from governance as well as the signed management representation letter once we reach that point. Essentially, management representing the representations over the financial statements and complete accurate information provided to us as part of the audit process. You can move into the next slide, which is just opening it up for any sort of questions that anyone may have for me.
My first question would be, as I don't know if we have questions from other commissioners, is do we have actually timeframes associated with the steps to finalize the audit?
Yes, so I just finished up my review. The team is working through clearing the comments within the audit binder. So I know there's been some questions that's gone to the team on the LASA side. So once that information gets resolved, we'll be sending it into our quality control review process. At a minimum, I can't commit to anything less than a 2-week quality control review process. However, it does not tend to take that long, especially after a 3/31 deadline. So I would say, barring any issues identified during review, the commitment by April 15th is what we'd be able to do.
Please.
Thanks. That was my question too, one of them. But maybe I should know this. I don't know how long I can use the newbie excuse, but I'll use it. The approval for governance, what's the process for that?
From what I understand, our ideal process is it goes through audit committee first for review and then comes to full commission for vote. Is that correct, Commissioner Slaza?
I mean, that's what I understand, but I'm
Yes.
actually really interested to hear what we should discuss this.
Yeah, and that's what I would propose, because I would like audit committee to have a review of the draft before the full commission votes on it. We can do that, I think, pretty quickly as a body. But obviously the largest lag on this is right now from the auditors themselves.
And so that's not written down anywhere, what our governance approval process is? Or is it?
Well,
is that it?
I just, if I may, it explicitly states in our audit committee charter that the audit committee is, and I have a copy of it here, the charter here, so I'm just going to read off the top part of it. It says that the purpose of the audit committee is to ensure LASA fulfills its responsibilities for oversight of the authority's annual single audit. So the way I read that is that we should have a first look at that single audit. So when it's submitted by our external auditors, be able to engage, ask questions, and then as a committee vote, and then what I believe ought to happen, then we should then bring that to full commission with time for the full commission to review that, and then there would be a vote at the full commission on how to proceed after we have the opportunity to engage with and ask questions if we have them with our auditors.
I agree.
We have enough time for all that?
I'm not sure about that, to be honest.
Okay.
Eileen, when is our next full commission meeting? It is April 24th. So April 24th, if we were to receive all of this by April 15th, which would give the audit committee about a week and a half to get that prepared for full commission, does that seem reasonable? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could possibly move the committee to the 17th if we needed to.
I just want to express my willingness to move our audit committee meeting to whenever is most appropriate. But I also will note that this is an internal governance question that we have, which is separate from our time with our auditors we have on now. And I'm sensitive to the amount of time that Justin has. So I just want to say if there's other questions, we should probably use that. We have it just.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's finish up any questions for Justin himself. And then we can also turn to staff to hear from them and circle back. Any other questions for Justin at this moment? Please.
Justin, so you have submitted it to the quality review this morning or last night?
No. My team is working on clearing my review comments. Once my comments are addressed, then we'll proceed and move it into our quality control review process.
Okay, and you anticipate that today?
I anticipate it as once they're finished clearing my comments. I at this point they're working through them. Definitely this week, but I don't want to provide a commitment that we miss. So I would say this week.
I think maybe for scheduling, it might be helpful to know kind of when you think you'll know, in terms of when you'll have something to deliver for us for the audit committee to review.
Yes, so
And then
I
we can flex around that, but obviously the sooner we know that you can give us a date with confidence, the better for us in terms of getting things scheduled.
yes, I'll have a draft of the financial statements over to LASA this week. That's obviously before our quality control review, but the quality control review isn't something that I would expect any major changes to. So I can commit to providing that this week. But the quality control review process, again, it takes up to 2 weeks, but at this point, I wouldn't say it should take longer than about a week, given the number of jobs in our review pool at the moment.
I think what you're hearing from us is our interest in expediting, as you know, and whatever the challenges have been to get us to this point, that we want to make sure you have what you need, and the sense of urgency, obviously, that is important for us to be able to submit this with obviously appropriate reviews. Not want to have any problems with that, but I've chaired a couple
Yep.
of
We're moving at a
so,
pace
yeah.
that we can. Yep, we're moving at the fastest pace we possibly can.
Hi, Justin. Commissioner Graves, could you tell me, just explain the financial statement on audit opinion is unmodified, what that means?
Yeah, sure. So the with respect to the financial statements, so the goal there would be to issue an unmodified opinion, essentially stating that based on the procedures we perform, and again, like I said, it's not absolute 100% opinion. It is a risk-based approach audit, but based on those procedures, there's nothing that's come to our attention that would identify anything that would be a material misstatement within the financial statements, so that what's reported within the financial statements for cash is not materially misstated, receivable is not materially misstated, essentially, so individuals can rely on those financial statements. If we start to, I guess it might be easy to understand what options we have outside of an unmodified opinion. If for some reason I'm unable to get comfortable with the amount that's reported for cash, I might qualify in my opinion and state that with the exception of cash, the financial statements are free from material misstatement. So essentially, it means that the amounts reported are not materially misstated within the financial statements.
Great. And then one other question. So no material weaknesses were noted, but one significant deficiency noted.
Mhm.
Will you explain what that is?
Sure. So when we talk about deficiencies, we essentially have earlier I'd said 3, but I guess there's 4, right? So no deficiencies, but reportable would be 3. First would be something that might come to our attention that doesn't really warrant governance attention. That would be something that we would deem to be a management letter comment, or a verbal comment to management. Hey, we saw something that really isn't reportable, but it's an area that you might be able to strengthen your operations. When we start to talk about significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, that's where we deem it to be significant enough for governance to be aware of. That's why it becomes then reportable as either a significant deficiency or a material weakness. And then when we want to talk about the differences between significant deficiencies and material weaknesses, that has more to do with the severity, and whether or not, essentially the financial statements would be materially misstated by the issue with respect to internal controls. So our conclusion at the moment with respect to it being a significant deficiency is that there is an issue with the timely detection of errors, but there's been no indication that the lack of timely detection would result in a material misstatement in the financial statements to date.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your work on this. I just want to kind of play it back to you and make sure I understand where we are in the process. It sounds like in terms of your process, there's a 4-step process. We're in step 3, towards the end of step 3. And then once that's done, then it's a largely in-house process, the CLA quality control. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay.
So based on where I'm in stage 3, I know that my team has been sending some questions over to LASA management or LASA finance department to clear my comments. So that's what they've been working
Yeah,
through
and
yesterday
that's
and
my
today.
that's my
Yeah.
follow-up question is how much more interaction do you need with the team at LASA to get, which it sounds like there's still interaction that you're having with them to ask questions back and forth, receiving documents, because from what I understand, that part of the reason we're not going to make the deadline today is because maybe you haven't had access to everything you needed in a schedule that was agreed upon, and just want to understand what still needs to be done and what we can do on our side to make sure that we're giving you the information that you need and responding to you quickly. And to the extent that you're not, you don't receive that, how are you going to flag that to us?
Sure. Yeah. I would say to date, this week and last week, as the team's been working through closing down the audit, we have been getting timely responses. A lot of the issue or the reason that we're in the spot we're in has more to do on the front end delays in receiving information for us to audit. At this point, responding to us and our questions has been timely. So I haven't had any issues with that. I wouldn't expect the questions that we have to go past tomorrow. At this point, I know that team's pretty much caught up with any of my comments, but I'd like to give them a little bit of a grace period.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, with no other questions at this time, Justin, we'll let you go and we'll continue our discussion.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. At this point, I know our internal team wanted to give some context to where we are today, so I'm going to turn it over to Geeta, our CEO, and Janine.
Thank you. The purpose of the single audit process, it is a critical tool for accountability, transparency, and continuous improvement, and we welcome a thorough and rigorous review of our operations. Our staff made a good faith effort to meet the deadline. However, over the past year, we've experienced several transitions in key level leadership roles. These changes required shifts in responsibility and adjustments to internal processes, particularly around document coordination and the submission timelines. As a result, we could not get all the required materials to the auditors as quickly as needed. And as you noted, he said that the delay occurred on the front end of this process. As a result, we could not get all of the required materials. Over the same period, we were managing multiple overlapping demands on our finance team. In addition to the single audit, we were simultaneously responding to a county audit. We did request that the county audit start after our single audit, but that request was denied. We were also dealing with separate requests from the city for additional documentation. At the same time, we were also prioritizing the release of advanced payments to our providers, an effort that is critical to ensuring the continuity of services for the people we serve. Individually, each of these efforts is both necessary and appropriate. Taken together, however, they created a perfect storm: competing timelines, heavy documentation requirements, and significant strain on staff capacity, particularly during a period of leadership transition. However, that context does not change our responsibility, but it does help explain the operational pressure our teams were under. It also reinforces why the steps we are taking now, strengthening our financial structure, adding experienced capacity, and implementing clearer processes and timelines are so important. We are currently partnering with KPMG, a nationally recognized and highly regarded firm, to help us reconfigure and strengthen our finance department. This effort is long overdue and will address not only the single audit process, but also broader financial operations, including how we manage advance payments to our providers. These changes are designed to ensure that even under multiple simultaneous demands, we can execute reliably and on time in the future. We've also informed HUD and remain in communication with them on this issue. We've also informed the city and the county. We remain committed to completing the audit thoroughly and to learning from this experience so we can come back stronger next cycle. Janine Lim is here to give a summary of the process, and we also have staff here from the finance department.
Good morning, Janine Lim, Deputy CFO. Justin Measley already covered where we are in the process, so we'll forego that part of my update. So I'm just going to let you guys know what happens next after the auditor submits their draft report. So after CLA principal auditor completes his review, they will share the draft report with LASA management. This is the first time that we are seeing what we'll anticipate in the draft report. So if LASA management agrees with the conclusions, including any findings, we'll draft corrective action plans for the findings and provide that to CLA. From there, the audit will move to quality review. If LASA management does not agree with the conclusions, which we just saw, does not agree with the conclusions or the nature or severity of the findings, we will provide our response, including additional context, documentation, and authoritative literature and citations to support our viewpoint along with the corrective action plans for the findings. CLA, considering LASA's management's response, will respond with revised conclusions and findings or explain why the conclusion and findings should remain. Upon CLA and LASA management agreement on the conclusions, the findings, and corrective actions plans, then the audit will move forward to CLA quality control review. After the quality control review is completed, this is when, and you all will decide the timeline in which how you're going to hear this. We'll go to audit committee, as I understand, and go to full commission. After the final audit package is approved, it will be then submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse.
Great. Thank you, Janine. I also want to thank Janine publicly. She has not been at LASA very long, and she has stepped in and stepped up to assist LASA at this critical time. But I also want to thank John Campa, who's also in our audience. He's been working around the clock on the single audit and all the other issues I mentioned. But I just want to assure the commission that we have a clear and actionable plan moving forward. In addition, we are receiving support from the county. They are working with us to temporarily provide experienced, skilled staff to bolster our internal capacity alongside the contracted professionals that we've already brought on. This added expertise will help us stabilize our operations while we implement longer-term improvements. Just as important, we are working with KPMG and putting in place a more structured framework to ensure this does not happen again. This includes establishing clear ownership and accountability for every component of the audit, creating a detailed audit calendar with earlier internal deadlines, implementing regular progress check-ins with leadership, including the audit committee and the full commission, and a centralized document management so materials are complete, accurate, and submitted on time. We are also building in escalation points so that any delays are identified and addressed early. Finally, we want the commission to know that we are ready to fully respond to the single audit as soon as it's issued. We are committed to not only completing it, but to learning from it and continue to strengthen our systems, which have been in peril for many years. And we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, seeing no questions on this. Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the comments. I know that as early as recently as last week, LASA gave a statement that said our process was on track. Could you explain why we thought it was on track?
Sure, we believed it to be on track. We believed that we had the documents in on time and that the auditor was going to work over the weekend to get these done. And we are anticipating what the significant weaknesses would be that he outlined, and we do have responses to that. It just went on longer.
But there was no built-in time for any kind of governance oversight for that.
There was a shortened period of time. I know we discussed that, which was unfortunate because of the delay at the beginning of the audit. It did cut down about 2 weeks at that time. But we thought it was the most important thing was to get our audit uploaded to the federal system on time.
I agree, because it's putting our federal funding at risk if we don't have it uploaded today.
Absolutely.
So
why we've been in contact with HUD.
I understand.
Discussed.
So,
Yeah.
but there was no time. There was like so the concept of building a time for governance review. There was basically.
Yes. Next year, we will absolutely do that. I think this year we were under the gun. And so we felt it was the most important thing was to get it uploaded on time.
Okay, understood. So yeah, just skip over the governance, like kind of a methodical review by this commission.
Unfortunately, right.
Unfortunately, yeah,
Yes.
understood.
Yeah.
And then I just have a question that came up in our audit committee meeting. There was mention, and I have the email here from that the auditor sent to you on February 18th that mentioned that there were many past due items and that we needed to be in quality control by the 15th, and that there was a risk that they would not be able to guarantee a submission on this date. And that was on February 18th. You didn't mention it to me or the audit committee that warning was there. So that wasn't until March 3rd that we heard anything about it. It's hard for us to understand what's going on. And I just want to understand why you didn't pass that warning on to the audit committee.
Well, he did give an update on March 3rd that to the audit committee, and we expected everything to be on time at that date.
Okay. Another question on the access. It sounds like there was upfront issues with accessing the documentation that we needed to provide. I just wanted to know if we provided MIP cloud access, read-only MIP cloud access to our auditors. This is something that I think is relatively standard. I've checked in with some other auditors and groups that have been audited. That's something. It's kind of a read-only access to our financial systems that helps take the burden off of the internal teams to have to, instead of, they can just provide access directly to the accountants who are doing the review. And that saves a lot of labor. It's a labor saving time. I just want to understand, do we provide MIP cloud access read-only to Clifton Larson? And if we didn't, what was the thinking behind that?
Janine Lim, Deputy CFO. That is certainly a great suggestion. That was not requested of us. We did not provide that. It was not a decision point. That wasn't an option that was asked of us, nor was it requested.
Okay, I mean, I think that's relatively standard for. I mean, I'm just okay. Understood.
But in the future, absolutely, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's a basic thing. It's a basic thing.
Just sorry, sure. I think well, there's lots of things that the challenges that we had.
One second. I think, is her microphone on?
Yes,
it is. Sorry. Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Challenges in getting to where we are, and there's a lot of improvement that we're talking about, and people have tried to step up as much as possible. I think what would be great for the future is to get through all this, get us submitted, and look at what our timeline is going to be for the next year, and the necessity for improvements, including governance as much time as possible. And whoever may be doing the single audit and having some of those benchmarking, that would be really helpful, so that there's direct communication, not only with the audit chair, but with you or whomever it is that says, here's our timeline and expectation. Again, as a chair of public corporations, which I've been on, that is part of what the auditor will provide to you as well, as to here's all the benchmarking times. So I just think as we go forward, again, get through this challenge as we are now, but I think having a plan for that next year would be really helpful, and to be able to look at that timeline going back. So if it is required data information that's given to them on this date, that we need to have it go before the audit committee 2 weeks before the due date, that it would be, that we all are familiar with that, and executive team and everyone else is on the same page, and the auditor.
Absolutely. We absolutely agree. And this is why I think it's critical to have KPMG helping us, so we have an outside trusted voice to help us create a system that works going forward, because the system we have is not working at all in finance.
Could I just add on one thing? I think what I'm going to put on the agenda for the audit committee, a discussion and development of that kind of ideal framework. So that way we have it's clear and we know how it's built in, because this process now of like, basically if we're on track where things would be submitted today, we'd look at it today and then we'd submit it by 5 o'clock Eastern, or I don't know, whatever the timing is doesn't allow time for kind of governance standards that I think that we ought to be adhering to. So in our audit committee, we will take that on as an agenda item, and we're going to build in what we believe is the best practice that ought to be followed by LASA next year for this.
Great. And that was my, that was the direction I wanted to go in. And again, we have had through the single audits, I have been through a few here, and I will say some have gone really smoothly. Others have been close to the deadline. And so always having that best practice is really important. So I think going forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, seeing no more questions.
Sorry, I can't help myself. Just could you clarify, KPMG are they going to be helping set up the systems and the process and all that stuff internally to kind of the point that was just made?
Their contract is for a lot to do with the finances and the advanced payment system. But I think part of what we can have them help us do is the sort of timeline that was discussed. But if the audit committee also wants to make a suggestion, we can incorporate that into what our design is going to be.
Yeah, but they do great work. So
Yes,
we
absolutely.
flip that. I don't know, but we can
Yeah.
talk about it later. But in terms of getting their recommendations first, that the
Yes.
audit committee can look at.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I like the idea of both having the audit committee as a governance structure help create that, as well as an outside entity with, best practice knowledge.
Absolutely.
Just would encourage coordination so we're not doing things separately.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks.
They're starting this week.
And I think too, if best practices with any new technology that might make this a little more fluid and easier for LASA, might be, something that KPMG can consult you on as well.
Absolutely. Our MIP software was extremely slow. In fact, it was down for 2 days, causing us to be late with the documents the city requested and slowed our entire process down. So I do believe we've had that system for a while, but I do think we can look to an upgrade if we get different suggestions on that. They also do not have, it's not like we own the software. Our IT people have to reach out to their IT people. They aren't always, our finance team was working about 12 hours a day these past 3 weeks or so, but the MIP software people do not work those hours. So we did have some delay.
Could I ask your comments on how you think this, we're supposed to file the single audit today, how this may impact future funding from HUD or our relationship with our federal funding, which is a significant portion of what we do?
I wouldn't want to guess. We are working closely and talking to them every day. We have a great partnership with HUD, so we're hoping that they will be understanding with this. That's why we did contact them ahead of time as well. We're also keeping the city and the county in the loop as well.
Thank you.
Okay, before we close, I do actually want to underscore that the internal team has been in contact with HUD, with the county, with the city, and trying to make sure that all of our stakeholders and partners have an understanding of what's going on here. It's one of the reasons we wanted to have this meeting here today as well, so that we could talk about our plan moving forward. Ginny?
Janine Lim, Deputy CFO. Yes, I will just want to echo that. We have been in touch with the HUD field office. They seem amenable to our situation and to our stated timelines. So we are hopeful that this will be a good outcome despite having missed the deadline.
It's also important to note that we hopefully will get it in within weeks. It's not an extended delay. Is one of the reasons too.
No, we don't foresee this going on for longer than 3 weeks.
Okay, yes. Thank you to all the commissioners, especially for being flexible around these meetings. I know as we have nimble and agile needs for the agency, it's really important that governance can meet those needs. Okay, seeing no more questions, I'll pause for that. I move to adjourn. Great.
Thank you.
I don't have to move to adjourn. I just adjourn us.